Episode 199, Nicole Greer, CEO of Build a Vibrant Culture.
My favorite mistake in my career is giving myself away.
I'm Mark Graben. This is My Favorite Mistake. In this podcast, you'll hear business leaders and other really interesting people talking about their favorite mistakes. Because we all make mistakes, but what matters is learning from our mistakes instead of repeating them over and over again. So this is the place for honest reflection and conversation, personal growth, and professional success. Visit our website at myfavoritemistakepodcast.com. For more information about Nicole, look for a link in the show notes or go to markgraben.com/mistake199. As always, thanks for listening. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. My guest today is Nicole Greer. She's a principal coach and CEO of her company, Build a Vibrant Culture, who specializes in helping individuals, corporations, faith-based organizations, and nonprofits fulfill their mission and exemplify what she calls vibrant leadership. And I think we'll have a chance to talk about that concept today. So for the last 20 plus years, Nicole's worked as a coach, a marketing director, a sales trainer, and what she calls a master of first impressions. So she's worked with a lot of people and organizations, and she founded Vibrant Coaching. So she works today as a speaker, trainer, facilitator, and coach. You can find her website at vibrantcoaching.com. So Nicole, thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm delighted. Thank you, Mark, so much for the invitation.
Well, thank you for accepting it. And so, the first question I have to ask, though, is like, what do you mean? What is a master of first impressions?
Well, I have been in the business of, impressing people out of the gate for a long time. I was the daughter of a gentleman who ran a beautiful boutique store in St. Louis, Missouri, and he took me to work every Saturday because back in the day, you didn't have babysitters and you just, took your children and they decided to behave. And so from a very early stage of life, I was very good at behaving. And I found as I watched my father and all of the beautiful women, and of course Sal, the gentleman in the shoe department, run their business, they were so good at making this first impression and making people feel warm. One of the things we know about first impressions is if I smile at Mark's going to smile right back at me. This whole thing of mirror neurons, it's a thing. I didn't know that when I was like 8 years old. But I learned how to do retail from a very young age. And I think that taught me a lot about making a good first impression. It's just about smiling and putting some good, vibrant energy out there.
Yes. Well said. So thank you for making a great first impression here for the episode and the audience. I hope I'm doing the same. So, Nicole, there's a lot that we can talk about related to your work and leadership and coaching. But as we always do here, the real first question, the main first question, across the different things that you've done, what would you say is your favorite mistake?
My favorite mistake in my career is giving myself away, not realizing my value. For a very, very long time, people would offer me positions, or they would offer me a job, or they would offer me a promotion, and they would say, "This is what we can pay you." And I would just be like, "Okay," because I've just always been so excited to serve. Again, back to that upbringing that I had, where customer service was how you did things. So I think I got confused between what providing service and value, and then getting paid for it. So I had a little disconnect there for a good while.
So so it sounds like there was kind of a pattern, and maybe, we talked through a couple scenarios. How did you realize then that was a mistake that you were making?
Well, I'm really blessed. I have a wonderful, very smart husband, and we got married, and I was in the property management business. So my first career was in restaurant work. Before, I was with Daddy at the store, but then I went into restaurant work, which I adored, food and beverage. I think that's wonderful. Everybody should have to be a bartender or wait tables or be a hostess or cook in the kitchen or do the dishes or something. That's such a good training ground. And then I got in property management. Well, I was running a beautiful apartment community, and the gentleman in charge of the company gave me a call, and he said, "Listen, Nicole, I have a really great opportunity for you." And I said, okay. He said, we would like you to continue to run your apartment community. Okay, so you're going to keep your old job. Plus, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to be the marketing director for the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I said, okay, that sounds fun. And I said, well, what would be required of me? And he said, well, you would begin to, build the customer relationship management process. You would go out and do business development. You would attend these meetings. But I want to be clear, Nicole, you're going to be running your apartment community, making sure things are all systems go and you're meeting your profit and loss goals and all this kind of stuff. I said, okay. And I left the conversation without even inquiring about compensation for these new responsibilities. I just thought he's putting this new task on my plate, but really it was a whole nother job.
I was just going to say that's a job, not a task. I mean, there's a whole job description around that commensurate with a salary. So what happened then? I mean, did you continue diving into that? We'll call it opportunity. What happened?
Well, I went home and, I have this, kind of a little bit of an maybe overly optimistic, view of the world. And I go home and I tell my husband, I said, listen, what happened to me today? I got this opportunity, this new thing that they want me to do. They want me to go out and market. And I think that'll be really help me and grow my resume and, make me more valuable. And he's like, well, how much are they going to pay you?
Right.
And I was like, oh, I forgot to ask that question, because I've always just been so eager to please, so eager to do the customer service piece, that sometimes you get confused about really the value that you're bringing. And I'm betting, Mark, that people are listening to this going, oh my gosh, my plate's overflowing. Am I getting paid what I should be getting paid? I think it's really important to sit down and take a look at things.
So I want to dig into some of that, like, tips and advice for others, but help us kind of, resolve the story. Did you push back on what they were asking, or did you could try it and tolerate it for so long? What happened?
No, and that's the big mistake. I wasn't brave enough. I wasn't courageous enough to get up the next day and go back and say, hey, I thought about this overnight, and all I had to say was I simply forgot to inquire, how will my compensation change as I take on this big responsibility? And I think that, that's the biggest mistake, not being brave enough to take care of yourself. So I went ahead and did it. And I did learn a lot. And here's the really good news. They did not promote me to like some, corporate marketing person. But what they did do is I think they saw, this gal works hard. She'll do anything we ask. Be careful right there. But they did end up promoting me, and I did get into the home office. And from that point forward, you know, I decided I'm really going to get paid what I'm worth. So when I finally got promoted to the home office, I made sure that, isn't it wonderful to have David Greer in my life? So I sat down with him, coached and counseled with him, reached out to some friends across the industry. What does this position pay in your company, right? And this was back in, the 90s. So, this is before we could look things up on Glassdoor and whatever. So I really had to do my homework. And so I think you can still look at the Glassdoors. You can go on Indeed. You can look at all these different places. That's my first tip. Go ask these hiring websites, what the position pays that you're in or the one you're aiming for. But then also you need to develop an incredible network of friends inside of your industry where they can help guide you and coach you.
Yeah. So you did that double duty. It didn't kill you, so it made you stronger.
Right. Yeah, you could say that. And I do have an incredible amount of energy, even as old as I am today at 56. I have the same energy that I had when I was like 26. So and I, my thing is, again, I love people. I've never met a stranger. I'm very good at networking. And I do believe, the old saying, I don't think it's 100% true, but there is some partial truth in the old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. because if I met people, I usually got an opportunity, and then I was scrappy enough to figure out what I was doing, and I think, is scrappy still a thing? I think it is. Is it a thing, Mark?
I think that word was popularized by the musical Hamilton, of the phrase young, scrappy, and hungry. If I think I got that right. I'm not going to try to sing, but
yeah. Well, maybe that's why I love Hamilton so much. I've seen it twice, and my daughter comes home from college, and in the kitchen, we're in our white sweat socks doing the entire, show, singing at the top of our lungs. So, all right. I love that it's a Hamilton thing.
Now I'm going to try to think of some other. Okay, well, maybe it'll just come up naturally. I'm not going to force other Hamilton references here. But I mean, well, so being vibrant. Okay, I am going to bring it back to a Hamilton thing again.
Okay. All right.
The advice that Aaron Burr gave Alexander Hamilton: talk less, smile more. I mean, I don't know if that's good advice. But I mean, like when it comes to being vibrant, I mean, I'm not trying to suggest really it means talking less, but I mean, like what, before we talk about vibrant leadership, like tell me more about, just to you, what that word vibrant means in terms of personality.
Yeah. Well, what it means to me is that the person who is vibrant is plugged in to the work that brings them to life. Okay. So all of us on planet Earth have what's called a unique ability. And I learned that term from Dan Sullivan, who is a very famous coach. And I took the process of unique ability, and I sat down and I looked at it, and I figured out what my own things were. And I'm like, it's so true. If Nicole Greer is using her unique ability, the things that she loves, the things that she is good at, the things that come naturally to her, although she does work on them to make them, even more vibrant, right? So that I'm illuminating, igniting, and energizing the people around me. That is what we need to do with our teams. So I have a person that works with me. Her name's Terry Baltziger. And I want to tell you, she's the most amazing woman in my life. She is nothing like me. She has a whole different set of unique abilities. And they are to sit quietly, focus on things, run the project through the process, do the accounting, make sure the calendar's right, send the reminders, do the details. And when she's doing that, she's lit. I mean, she is like on fire. She's like a firecracker. I got that done. I got that done. I got that done. Now, while her activity is like a firecracker, the ones that you light on 4th of July and you throw them in the air, it's like pop, 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 pop. That's how hers is. And my energy is, forward facing, lots of words, as you can tell, and I'm shedding that light out there and helping and hoping to help people learn something. I'm a teacher, really. I mean, if we boiled it down, that's really what I do.
Yeah. So when you've got that purpose, that can present itself in different ways. It could be smiling. Alexander Hamilton, it probably presented more, at least as portrayed in the musical. They kept asking him, why do you write like you're running out of time? Like, he was driven, but it probably was a more serious, like maybe inspiring, but a different form of vibrant leadership, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, he, as I understand, now everybody correct me as we go along here, put it in the comments or whatever. But I mean, like, he had training as an attorney, as I understand, right? But also he was an orphan.
Right.
His mother passed and he came to America. And I think sometimes people are lit with this other thing, like this desire to prove themselves. And the thing about Alexander Hamilton is, like, hello, George Washington's like, this boy can write. So, he saw that little light. And the way I see George Washington and Hamilton's relationship is like George tended it. In fact, I read a novel about Hamilton, and he said, let me go fight in the war. I think that's in the musical too. Let me go fight. And George's like, no, I need you right here doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it was. He was writing like he was running out of time because he just wanted to prove himself so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And, as you've touched on it, it goes to show, within a team, there are different leadership styles. There are certainly different personality types and different roles to play. So that can all be part
100%.
of a leadership team. But, but back to your phrase, vibrant leadership. I mean, how do you define that? I'm sure you've got kind of a very specific way of taking just the general theme of vibrant, what it means to be a vibrant leader.
Yeah. So my little acronym that I teach people is if you want to build a vibrant culture, you want to be a vibrant leader, you want to demonstrate vibrant leadership, you got to get lit. And people love that. They laugh at first. They're like, get lit. And I'm like, yes, but not that kind of lit, a different kind of lit.
Yeah.
And so, if you got lit on, say, alcohol, you'd be full of spirits. Are you with me right now?
Right. Spirit.
Right.
Yep.
If you had a couple bourbons, you'd get lit. Right.
Yeah.
So instead of using alcohol, what you would do is you would, again, lead from within. That's the L, right? So again, I use my unique ability. I know what I'm good at. I know what I am competent at. And then I know what I'm incompetent at. And I think vibrant leaders are transparent and they tell the people around them, here, listen, this is how I got to this level. I can do this stuff. And I need all you smart people that work for me to do all the other stuff because, I'm either competent at it or frankly, I'm incompetent. And you all have complementary skills and unique ability that together, now don't miss this, like a fire, right? Vibrant means illuminated, lit. So if I'm building a fire, I got like 4 logs and we got to keep this lit all year. And so I have Mark, who's on my team. He's got 4 different logs. He puts those on the fire. And then I've got Terry, and she puts 4 logs on the fire. And then I've got all my other employees or associates. And I need all that fuel to get this thing vibrant, to make it flame up and make it, number one. And so it's all about, everybody bringing their gifts, their fuel to the process in that unique way. So that's the first thing. So lead from within. What in you do you have to bring to the party, and figure that out? Yeah. So I think that's important.
So then what's the rest of that framework then? So that's the L. There's an I and right? A T.
Yeah, an I and a T. That's right. And so the I is about integrity. And when I talk about integrity, I make people upset, Mark. So I'm just going to, say, please just listen for a second. Okay. So if I go and I speak in front of an audience, which I often do, and I say, if I said, how many of you are men and women of integrity? Mark, every single hand goes in the air.
Sure. Who doesn't want to admit to themselves or especially to others? I mean, yeah, even social pressure means your hand would go up, but
100%. And it's like, then I do this thing. I shock the audience and I say, well, it's great that you want to be a person of integrity, but here's the truth about integrity. None of us, not myself included, are ever 100% in integrity all the time. And so my joke is, write down the word HALT, HALT. People usually are not their best selves. And, when you're in integrity, you're your best self. You're on your best behavior. But we're not our best selves when we're hungry, we're angry, we're lonely, and we're tired. Usually those 4 things put us in a state where we're not as nice as we need to be, not as cordial, not as good a colleague, maybe not as truthful, dare I say that, not as courageous, not as brave. And, I shared my greatest mistake with you. When I didn't go the next day back and say, hey, I'm really excited about doing all this marketing for y'all. And I realized I made an error. And I should have talked to you about compensation. See, I lacked a serious character trait called courage or bravery. And so I was out of integrity because I didn't do what I knew was right. I took the easy way out.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate you admitting that. I mean, I want to come back. I was going to ask you, some thoughts on what it means to show others grace. I mean, without trying to sound like I'm lecturing you could show yourself grace over, you were
Sure.
You were in that situation. Instead of framing it as lack of courage, it could be framed as, I don't know how else to put it. Like, if you were, sometimes people are in an environment, I'm thinking of different scenarios where, let's say in healthcare, you'll hear sometimes people lecture, people in healthcare, you have an obligation to speak up. You should be courageous. But the truth is, it can be really dangerous to speak up about certain things. And like, is it fair to ask someone to be courageous when there could be risk of being harmed in some way? So I think there's an obligation for leaders, to create an environment of safety where it is safe.
100%.
So I don't know what the direct parallel is to your situation there, but I guess my encouragement is, not to be too hard on yourself about that. I think a lot of us, I agree that, boy, they were putting you in they were taking advantage of you. That was, maybe that's a little strongly stated, but they were putting you in a tough position, I would say.
Yeah. Well, here's one thing that I look back at that, again, I'm 30 years older than I was then, and when I look back at that, I think, she was not brave. However, she learned from the lesson, right? So that's where you get back in integrity, right? It's like the minute you go, oh, I should have asked for compensation, and you go, and the day you say, oh, I'm never going to let that happen again. That's when you restore your integrity. And I think what you were saying about healthcare, be careful. So there's this other character trait called being discerning, or to practice discernment. And so I think that's one of those character traits that, like you'll make a split decision, or you'll not think about the risks, and well, if I do this, will I make people angry? The kind of the thing you were saying. But if you're in there and you practice that discernment, then you'll be the kind of person that's like, okay, this is a place where I'm not going to be courageous, and this is a place where I am going to be courageous. I have this list of 48 commendable traits. And when I work with teams, and in fact, when I work with a personality assessment that I use called the Tilt, I give this out to people. In fact, I'd be glad to give it to all your listeners. But there's 48 commendable traits, and just get your head wrapped around that. I mean, like, who could be exercising all 48 of these at the same time? I mean, that's Herculean stuff. But if you look at integrity that way, that there's many facets to integrity, and using those traits skillfully, to your point, is what's really essential. Then you're in integrity. Like, I realize character is important, and I'm using it intentionally.
Yeah. So we can celebrate, and I'm glad you kind of brought the story back, Nicole, to not just the mistake, but then more importantly, and this is what we try to celebrate here, the learning.
Right.
Figuring out how to not repeat the mistake as you were able to demonstrate later on in your career. So we've got lead from within, integrity, and I don't think we've gotten the T yet.
Yeah,
to close the loop on getting lit.
Yeah, so T is all about transformation, and I belong to the American Association of Change Management, which, if that is a wonderful organization, please go join. And I belong to my local chapters as well. I have studied change management. I'm an OD person. I got all that stuff. And one of the things that kind of makes me insane about this change business is that people keep saying change is hard, and people don't like to change. And so that's just the totally wrong way to approach change with your team. First of all, don't sit down and go, we're going to do this and it's going to be hard. Well, that's not very motivational. That is totally taking everybody down the feeling scale. So I want everybody to realize that building a vibrant culture and being a vibrant leader and having vibrant leadership skills is that you are a change agent.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
That's what you do. You change stuff. And it's as simple as back to my daddy's store he worked at. It was called Franklin Simon. It was this bougie boutique place. I mean, those people were constantly changing the inside of that store. We're going to take this mannequin out of the window. We're going to put different clothes on that mannequin. We're in the spring season, so let's take down the winter display, put up the spring display. That there's only 2 of these left. Put 2 of them on the sale rack. I mean, it was the whole thing's change, and that's kind of a fun example, especially for those of you who like to shop. But if I worked in a dental office yesterday, I went to the dentist. Look at my teeth, Mark. Aren't they pretty? So anyways, I went to the dentist. And when I went to the dentist, I could tell that this dental office was running on, all 8 cylinders. And like I got home, before I got home, it said, how was your visit? It was in my email box. Anything that we could do to make things better. There's an organization that's all about constant transformation.
Sure. Yeah.
So we have to stop talking about change management, something we do sometimes. It's what we do all the time.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between how you react when change is imposed on you by others versus when you are able to initiate change. I hate that generalization of people don't like change. I mean,
me too.
People don't like to be told what to do. That might be more directionally correct.
Yeah. And so, and here's the thing about people is, I'm going to go back to the point you made earlier. It was really good. You said there's all these different personalities. So, the way I have been taught is, I'm certified in all this stuff: Myers-Briggs, DISC, PEP, TILT, ALP, the list goes on and on. But essentially, there are 4 quadrants to most personality profiles. One of those quadrants is somebody who has a strong opinion. And do we need strong opinions? We absolutely do. Who's got a strong opinion? Who's outspoken, who's got that energy, who's got that drive, who is Alexander Hamilton, who is writing like he is running out of time. There's a constant sense of urgency. Okay, these people are fantastic transformers, the T in LIT for our acronym. And they like change, especially if you challenge them with it. Like that's how you say, do you think you could help me change this?
Yeah.
I'm thinking you're the right person to help me. Right.
Engage
and they
them.
go, you're right.
Yeah,
I am the right person. And so they have that energy. And so you're calling in Alexander Hamilton, to help you change the day and change the financial system or not change it, set up the financial system for the United States of America. So it's how you talk to that person. Now, the other quadrant is the person who is very talkative, like your guest on your podcast today.
Are you a Myers-Briggs extrovert by chance?
I am flaming extrovert all the way in the outlier position. But anyway, I'm working on it. It's a lifelong thing.
I'm an introvert, by the way, so that's why I'm happy to let you talk. Go ahead.
Well, so an extrovert, as you said, I have lots of ideas, lots of energy, lots of enthusiasm. I'm optimistic. And so if Mark is my leader and he comes to me and he says, Nicole, you always see the sunny side of things and how things will work. I've got this idea rolling around in my head and I need you to help me implement it. What are all the things you would do? So we're not calling it a change. We're calling it an idea. That's her favorite thing on the planet is a new idea. And so she's in there brainstorming with you. Now, 12 of her ideas will be great. And 27 of them, we're not sure. So, but you got a whole gamut of things that you can work with, right? So she's the brainstormer. All right. The third person is this person that is like seriously a steady Eddie, solid, go with the flow, accommodating, customer service from the heart, just great, solid folks on your team. And they don't mind things changing either, as long as you say it the right way. And here's how you say it to that group. We have been taking a couple of ideas and we've been talking about them. I talked to this group, which was your opinionated, get her done group. We talked to the idea group. And now We're coming to you because you know what? You kind of understand how everything's going to hit everybody in the organization. We know you care deeply about people. So we want to show you this idea. Now, notice how my tone changed.
Sure.
That's how we talk. Would you please tell us how you think this might impact all the stakeholders?
Mm-hmm.
And if you were going to support this idea, what strategies would support everybody? We need your help. You're so good at helping. And then finally, you have your last group of people. And these people are conscientious, solid, steady, reliable, organized, methodical. They want a plan. They want project management process. And so you go to them and you say, this is going to be as short as possible. I've brought a diagram and an Excel spreadsheet with my ideas on it. I would like you guys and gals to help me get this in a methodical format. And I would like you to definitely find the flaws.
Yeah.
Would you please point out where this is not going to work? And then would you offer ideas to fix it?
Yeah. Those are all great examples of engaging people in change instead of forcing it upon them.
Yeah. And so don't miss that. You got to figure out who's who, and you got to have 4 meetings. But unfortunately, the leader just sends out an email. This is happening. And then, of course, water cooler, break room, Slack goes mad. It's crazy. Yeah. So.
Well, Nicole, I wanted to ask you one other question, and I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes. Again, our guest is Nicole Greer. There was an article you wrote on LinkedIn called The Love Habit. And, it's funny, when as an engineer who started working in healthcare, it was the first time I'd ever heard the word love in like a workplace professional caring environment. Felt like, HR violation to use the word love back in a manufacturing company. Don't be inappropriate or whatever. But
oh my goodness,
great article. And there was that word or this idea of showing others grace. So you wrote, really well about this in the piece, but let me ask you, for those who are listening, what does that mean to you of showing others grace?
Yeah. So grace, in the definition I use, is unmerited favor. So that's the definition of grace. And what that means is that you may not deserve my love, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. I'm going to be generous, right? Now, here's the thing. Remember the part where I was saying that, sometimes you're out of integrity and you don't do things right, or you don't follow through on your promises, or whatever your thing was that day because you were hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So sometimes you fall short, and you're going to, because you're a human. And so if you don't extend grace, it's very hard to get grace. And there's going to be a day you're going to need a little grace. You're going to need somebody to go, oh, bless her heart, Nicole Greer. She takes on too much. She tries too much, whatever her personality flaws are, so she messed up, but I'm going to help her clean up her act. I'm going to help her clean up the situation, and we're going to move forward, because this isn't something you're going to, here's the thing at work, people do things and you judge it. Dare I say that? Just check yourself. You judge what people do, and you kind of start to put them in one category or the other, which is, I like them, they're good. I don't like them, they're bad. I mean, these are very simple categories.
Sure. Right.
And we can't do that, because here's how our work worlds are. We work with large numbers of people across the globe now, across the country, from one house on that corner to that house on that corner remotely, or whatever we're doing. And people aren't going to get fired over a small misstep, like not hitting a deadline or something like that. And, if we could get in there and talk to that person about, oh my gosh, Nicole, I'm calling you because I care. Okay. And insert the word love right there if it's HR appropriate, because I love you. Tell me what happened. Oh my gosh, I was late because my daughter was sick all night. And actually, honestly, I just didn't get it on my calendar.
Yeah.
Does any of this ring with anybody?
Yeah. No, it's good.
And so you find out the real reason and you say,
Mhm.
well, next time you get in that position, would you please call me, even if it's 9 o'clock at night, so we can
Yeah.
hit the deadline?
Yeah. Well,
Because we're human.
we are, and it demonstrates seeking first to understand. I mean, the one other line that I'd pulled
Oh,
out from
yeah.
the article is that offering grace is love that focuses on maintaining relationships rather than a personal desire or need to be right. And I'll share a
Mm,
reflection. There are times when I have gotten myself in trouble, not like sent to HR or fired, but where it's damaged relationships.
of
That
course.
personal desire or need to be right can be very counterproductive at times. So that's something I've tried working on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll try to show
So,
myself some grace over past missteps.
right. Well, when I got my first coaching training, I got, they give you a certificate or whatever. And it was so valuable. But the master coach was this wonderful guy, Dave Cowan. And he told me this one time. He said, Nicole, let's do this. No one gets to be wrong, only partially right. We were kind of debating something back and forth, and he was just like, well, here's the thing. I think I'm right about part of it, and you're right about part of it. Let's take our two right parts and put them together instead of
Right.
their, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was so helpful to me. And I was like, that's exactly right. No one gets to be wrong, only partially right.
Yeah.
There's a lot less hard feelings in there.
Yes. Well, that's well said. So, okay, one final question, Nicole.
Okay.
When you talk about coaching leaders, one thing we talked about the first time we had chatted hasn't really come up here yet today. It might be a good point to end the episode on. What is your approach, or what have you done? How have you tried to coach leaders who struggle with this question of how should I react to mistakes when they're brought to my attention, when I see them being made in the workplace?
Yeah. So I'm a huge believer in feedback. And so here's an oldie but a goodie. Everybody go buy this book. It's called How Full Is Your Bucket? Okay. And so this is really good because it matches our love thing we were just doing. So in that book, they talk about how everybody is walking around with an emotional bank account. And so and depending on what's going on at home, how the drive-in was, how your boss looked at you in the meeting, what your coworker did or did not do, whatever, all day long, that emotional bank account is either getting things added to it, you're getting a deposit, or you're getting a debit. Somebody's stealing some of your emotion, like your joy or your happiness. So all day long, you're going up and down in your emotional bank account. Well, when I coach leaders, I tell leaders it is your number one job to keep that person lit, right? Keep your employees vibrant. And so what you do is you give them so much positive feedback. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying make stuff up. I am not saying that. That's so important that people hear that. I'm saying catch people doing things right. There's another old book called The 1 Minute Manager. If you don't have that one, that's an oldie but a goodie. Go get that. And in there, they talk about managing by walking around. So go catch people doing things right. And when you catch them, you're so specific on how you give the feedback. And the formula is called a C3: circumstances, conduct, and consequences. So if I catch Mark Graban doing something fantastic, this is what I say: Mark, today at the beginning of this podcast, you greeted me with a smile. You welcomed me with open arms. You made sure I felt good and our internet was ready to go. And consequently, I felt like I was in good hands and that I was going to have an awesome experience. And that is so important to me. So thank you. So
You're very
here,
welcome.
if and what do you think? Do you feel good? Did you get an
I did.
emotional deposit just now?
Yes, very much.
Okay,
Yes.
fantastic. Yeah. So here's what I did. I said at the beginning of this podcast, that's the circumstances when it happened. Then I said the conduct. I said He smiled, welcomed, he got me prepared, he checked the internet. And then what were the consequences? When Mark does all these things, this thing happened.
Yeah.
I felt good. I was ready. I'm excited. I'm having a great experience. Whoa, that's how you build a vibrant culture. Do more of that.
Yeah.
But see, I didn't say, you did such a great job when we got on the call.
It wasn't vague. It wasn't.
I mean, like, you're like, well, thank you. Right. But here's what's going to happen. The next podcast that Mark has, he's going to repeat those behaviors because he got such good feedback that that's successful. And it's the same thing with the people at work, So if you are in a meeting, I bet you all of you people listening to this have to go to these things called meetings. So pay attention to the behavior of people in meetings. And so the example of a positive piece of feedback, a C3 would be, let's say Lily's on our team. Say, Lily, in the meeting today, when we were talking about Project X, you asked lots of questions. You were curious, and you offered 3 ideas, one of which I think we're going to use. And consequently, I'm sitting here thinking, I am so lucky to have Lily on my team. She's very driven. We're going to be a success. Those will be the consequences of that. And Lily's like, well, geez, Nicole, I was just doing my job. But see, Lily's going to get in her car and she's going to think about that. And that's going to make her feel good. And she's going to want to go to bed, get up early, and come back to work and help some more. Now, if somebody is bad, has bad behavior, they lose integrity. Okay, so don't miss my eye in lit. It's like when people are not good, they're out of integrity. That's why we're not all in integrity all the time. So let's say it's a different meeting with a different team, and I'm going to call him George. So George does not behave in the meeting, and I call him into my office privately, of course, and I say to him, George, at the very end of the staff meeting, and then I pause and I say, do you remember the very end of the staff meeting? And when you give corrective feedback, you've got to really get the person tuned in, because people become delirious and go, what meeting? They play possum, right? And you say, right at the end of the meeting today. And he goes, yeah. And you say, okay, good. So at the end of the meeting, it just hit me weird. It was different. I didn't understand it. You kind of stood up abruptly. You pushed in your chair with a little more force than necessary. And you said, I'll believe it when I see it. And you were talking about when we were talking about Project X. And consequently, it alarms me, because that behavior tells me you don't believe in Project X. And so I am anxious and worried. What's up, George? And George is like, well, I just think it's a bunch of stuff that we're doing Project X or whatever his deal is. But like, I got to get in there with George, because he's going to be a problem for me if that goes on. And if I don't correct him, then the other people on that project say to themselves, oh, Nicole lets people get away with nonsense.
Right. That would be a leadership mistake on top of the meeting behavior mistake. A mistake to not give that feedback.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And here are the, maybe even George says when I do that, because I'm doing it in the right tone, I'm practicing leadership presence, and and I could extend the guy grace. I say, that's so weird for you to just do that. What's up?
Right.
And he says, oh my God. He says, I got bad news. And this whole thing just seems like it's going to be more work on my plate. I was angry. The guy lost his emotional intelligence. Now, if I'm a well-rounded leader, I might say, do you know what that's called when you get mad? And George goes, getting mad. And you're like, no, it's this whole leadership trait called emotional intelligence. And then you do a little teaching.
Well, Nicole, like you said earlier, you're a teacher. You had an opportunity to do some teaching with us here today. So I want to thank you for that. And again, our guest is Nicole Greer. You can learn more. There will be links in the show notes. That LinkedIn article and more. Her website is vibrantcoaching.com. So Nicole, thank you for being a Vibrant guest. I need to be, I am not up to speed on this C3 model. So there's an opportunity for me to give you more specific feedback after the fact, but I'll give the vague feedback and thanks. Thanks for being a great guest, an energetic, vibrant guest, and thank you for the time today.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on the show and extending me the grace and the opportunity to be here. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks again to Nicole Greer for being our guest today. To learn more about her, look for a link in the show notes or go to markraven.com/mistake199. As always, I want to thank you for listening. I hope this podcast inspires you to reflect on your own mistakes, how you can learn from them or turn them into a positive. I've had listeners tell me they started being more open and honest about mistakes in their work. And they're trying to create a workplace culture where it's safe to speak up about problems, because that leads to more improvement and better business results. If you have feedback or a story to share, you can email me, myfavoritemistakepodcast@gmail.com. And again, our website is myfavoritemistakepodcast.com.